All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are talking about a huge challenge for basically every leader out there. How do you stop treating inclusion like a chore, just some box to check, and instead turn it into a real, proactive advantage? We're going to look at how to build an actual roadmap for change, one that uses modern tech to create a culture where inclusion isn't just a buzzword, it's just how things are done. So let's get into it.
So I want to start with a pretty direct question for all you leaders and HR pros out there. And I want you to be honest with yourself. Take a hard look at your current inclusion strategy. Is it really baked into how you operate, or is it more of a collection of nice-sounding policies that don't actually lead to lasting change? I know it's a tough question, but you have to ask it, because believe me, the cost of getting this wrong is, well, it's absolutely staggering.
Over $500 million. Yeah. That's how much one Wall Street firm, Merrill Lynch, ended up paying over 15 years in discrimination lawsuits and all the related costs. And listen, this is not just some random number on a screen. This is a massive, flashing red warning sign about what happens in the real world when a company's culture is deeply flawed. So, if we want to figure out how to build a better future, we've got to start by looking back. We have to really dissect the failures of the past. And look, this isn't about blaming or pointing fingers. It's about learning some really important and really expensive lessons from a pretty dark chapter of corporate history.
Okay, so take a look at this. What's so wild is that this wasn't just a one-off thing, a single bad day or one rogue manager. No way. This was a systemic crisis that was just bubbling under the surface and then exploded over years. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, lawsuits against these big Wall Street firms were popping up all over the place. You had Morgan Stanley and Smith Barney paying out over $200 million combined. But Merrill Lynch, that became the big one. It was this legal battle that went on for more than a decade and just ripped the lid off some really deep-seated cultural issues. And this quote, this really hits hard. It comes from the executive who filed that huge lawsuit against Merrill Lynch back in 2005. And get this, he'd been at the company for 22 years. He basically said that the firm systematically held back the careers of indigenous and ethnic American brokers. They were kept away from the big clients, and sometimes they were even publicly humiliated. So you see, this was never just about money. It was about a deeply human experience of being excluded and working in a toxic environment.
And if you look at the numbers, they really tell the whole story. At the time, out of more than 15,000 financial advisors, only about 700 were indigenous or ethnic Americans. That's less than 5%. I mean, the numbers don't lie, right? It just paints this incredibly clear picture of a system where some groups were hitting roadblock after roadblock. So, what did they do about it?
Well, the typical corporate playbook in a crisis like this is to roll out the quick fixes, right? Things like mandatory training sessions, new complaint systems. But what we've learned from decades of this stuff is that these reactive band-aids aren't just ineffective. Sometimes they can actually make things worse. Let's break down exactly why.
So you can really see the two different mindsets here. On one side, you've got the reactive stuff. Something bad happens, so boom, everyone gets herded into a mandatory training. That's just treating the symptom, the complaint itself, but it completely ignores the disease, which is the biased culture. But on the other side, you have a proactive strategy. This isn't about a single training day. It's about redesigning the very systems of the business from the ground up. It's really the difference between slapping a Band-Aid on a deep wound versus actually performing the surgery to fix the problem for good.
And this is why those checkbox initiatives just don't work. They're totally superficial. A lot of the time, they just make managers feel singled out, which leads to resentment and pushback. And let's be honest, they're usually focused on the company's need, like avoiding another lawsuit, not on the employee's need for a place where they actually feel like they belong. So you end up with this nice-looking policy on paper, but in the real world, day-to-day, nothing changes.
Okay, so if the quick fixes are a bust, what's the answer?
Well, the solution is a completely different way of thinking. It's about building a strategic plan that's actually designed for your organization, a proactive plan. We're calling it the roadmap philosophy.
Now, a roadmap isn't some generic policy you can just download off the internet. Not at all. It's a real operational plan built just for your company that weaves inclusion into the DNA of how you do business. It's all about moving from theory to practice, getting that policy out of the binder and turning it into real actions that create lasting change.
So what does a powerful roadmap actually look like? Well, a few things are key. First, it has to be custom-built for your culture. It needs to be simple enough for everyone, at every level, to get it and actually use it. And this is the big one. It has to be operational. We're talking concrete steps, not just vague ideas.
You figure out where you want to go, and then you work backward to build the exact path to get there.
All right, I know what you might be thinking. This sounds great in theory, but does it actually work in the real world? And the answer is a resounding yes. Let's take a look at Kellogg. They are a perfect example of a company that has woven this exact philosophy into their global operations for decades.
And this quote from their CEO really says it all. For Kellogg, inclusion isn't some side project HR's working on, it is central to their entire business strategy. They get that their real power comes from their people, so they've built a culture that's all about empowering every single person who works there.
And you can see how this philosophy just comes to life in what they do. They've got diversity ambassadors all over the company. They have these global employee resource groups, which they call BERGs. They're actively building partnerships to find diverse talent. They offer flexible work arrangements that actually empower people. And here's where it gets really crucial for today. In our hybrid and remote world, this philosophy has to extend to digital accessibility. It means making sure every single one of these programs is fully accessible to everyone. Like an employee with a disability who uses a screen reader should be able to jump into a BERG meeting just as easily as anybody else. That's what it looks like in practice.
Okay, so we've seen the failures on Wall Street and the success at Kellogg. So how do you, as a leader today, take these lessons and build a roadmap for the modern workplace? Well, the great news is that we have some incredibly powerful new tools that can help turn this philosophy into reality. The basic ideas behind the roadmap philosophy, they're timeless, but today we can totally supercharge them with a modern toolkit. I'm talking about technology, specifically AI and accessibility software. These tools can help us finally move past just good intentions and start getting real, equitable, and measurable results. And this is especially true for all the remote and distributed teams out there.
Okay, so this is where things get super practical. Let's start with hiring. You can use AI tools to scan your job descriptions before you post them to catch and fix any biased or exclusionary language. Then think about promotions. There are natural language processing tools that can analyze performance reviews. They're looking for that like me bias, where some people get vague feedback about their personality, while others get concrete feedback based on data. The AI can flag that inconsistency. And what about development? AI platforms can completely change the game by matching employees with mentors based on their skills and goals, not just who they know. This opens up pathways to leadership for so many more people.
So using AI to fight bias, that's one massive piece of the modern toolkit. The other half is just as important: actively building a digitally accessible workplace. Your roadmap absolutely has to include a plan for this. You can start by auditing the software your teams use every day. Does your video call software have good live captions? Does your chat app work seamlessly with screen readers? Then you can use automated testing to constantly look for and fix any barriers. Make it standard practice for everyone to use these inclusive features, so it just becomes second nature. But most importantly, you have to create a way to get direct feedback from your employees with disabilities. They are the true experts here, and they'll be your most valuable partners in getting this right. Okay, let's wrap this all up into a clear blueprint. Number 1, the cost of getting this wrong is huge, both financially and for your people. Number 2, say no to the easy, superficial quick fixes. They don't work. 3, embrace a philosophy of redesign. Build a custom roadmap that's about action, not just theory. 4, use the amazing modern tools we have, like AI and accessibility tech, to make your strategy a reality. And finally, number 5, and this is the most important one, always, always put your people at the center of all of this. This is a journey you have to take together. Look, at the end of the day, your company's culture is a story. And it's a story that's being written every single day. It's written in every meeting, in every promotion decision, in every person you hire. So the real question is, who's holding the pen? Are you just letting that story be written by old habits and hidden biases? Or are you going to pick up the pen yourself and intentionally write a new story, a story of real inclusion and opportunity for every single person? That choice is yours to make.